we don't have the access to all the health care that I'm sure you have in the bigger cities. Shopping and dining, entertainment, cultural attraction, those types of things. Those are things you're looking for. We just don't have that here. Are you living in Washington and considering a move to the North Idaho area? Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at a few of the differences between Idaho and Washington. And let's take a look to see if it's even worth it. Is the grass always greener on the other side of the fence? I don't know. Let's take a look, and we're going to get after it right now. Hey, if this is your first time to the channel, go ahead and subscribe below, tap the bell so you can be one of the first to be notified every time we talk about anything going on up here in the North Idaho area. I am Reed Wilson with Revealing North Idaho, and we are coming to you with some information about North Idaho every week. So do us a favor, subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment, like our stuff, share it. And of course, if you ever have any questions about what's going on up here in North Idaho, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to chat with you and get an idea of what you're looking to do and what your goals are. So again, like we were talking about, today we're talking to you that live in Washington. Is it even worth making the move to North Idaho? So I don't know. Let's talk about a few of these different categories and see if there's something that might resonate with you. The first one I was thinking about is the cost of living. I don't have actual figures on grocery prices and some of that. What I can tell you is I do know that sometimes when I drive from Idaho, Coeur d'Alene area, where we're at, and drive into the Spokane area, and it's only about a 20-mile drive. But as I leave Idaho, I can see that sometimes gas prices are as much as 60 and 70, 75 cents higher in Washington. So there are more taxes in Washington with goods and services. And so that is something to keep in mind. They are going to have more regulations for licensing and emissions. So although they do not have a state income tax, Idaho does, Washington does not. However, you do get taxed in a roundabout way with some of these other items. Some of the other things to think about with the cost of living is housing. Housing in Idaho is more expensive than it is in most areas of Washington. Not all areas. I'm sure you get over along the coast, and some of those areas in Seattle where people are getting, just exorbitant prices for housing. But you look through the middle of the state and a lot of places in Washington, I can compare the same house, a comparable home in North Idaho. Let's just, for example, say a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot home in North Idaho. In most areas, especially if we're in a suburban area, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden, Sandpoint, is going to cost you more than what it will cost you over in, say, Spokane Valley. Now, land in demand has just been higher here, maybe because of more people, more properties for sale. There's not as much demand there, but whatever the reason is, I think a lot of it is the land's just a little more expensive over here on the Idaho side, and I'm sure that does come a lot down to the supply and demand. But housing is going to be more expensive in many of the cases. And so just know that going to be higher than in many parts of Washington. Income, wages tend to be a little lower in the Idaho side than what you're going to find compared to a lot of areas in Washington. So that is also something to keep in mind. So, those are one of those things where you want to look at, does my quality of life I'm looking for outweigh, my income and what I need to do for, yourself and your family. So those are things to keep in mind. Again, we talked about the taxes. Property taxes in most areas in Washington is going to be higher than the property taxes in Idaho. And a couple things that relate to that is, even though the percentages aren't that far off from what we should be paying, that in Washington, when you buy a home, you are going to give them the home price and you're going to get taxed on what you purchased the home for. In Idaho, we are a non-disclosure state. Now, in some of these areas, I got to admit, seems a little fishy, but the tax commission's getting really good about figuring out what we paid for our home or very close. But there are some areas here that what they're assessing at is much lower than what you purchased at. And so I do find that in areas where we have the new construction, new subdivisions, they are a lot closer, and it's not hard to get that information because, those homes are advertised everywhere. But the other thing, just not being aside from being a non-disclosure state where, when you go in and purchase your home and set up your information, you can just say, I do not wish to give you that information when they ask you about how much you paid for the home. The other thing is, if this is now going to be your primary residence, we have what we call a homeowner's exemption, where you can take off up to $125,000 off of the assessed value. If you claim this home as your primary residence in Idaho, you will be able to take that off of the assessed value to lower your property tax. So that's something to keep in mind. I do think in most cases, especially from the western side of Washington, when I'm talking to people and they are comparing taxes, by far a lot lower in taxes than what they're paying over there. Now, the other thing, remember, is you pay an excise tax when you sell your property. And so I believe that's anywhere from about a 1 3/8%, somewhere right in there. If you just sold your home and you got to tack on another 1 1/4% onto the state's going to take. So if you're selling your home in Washington, you've got to also remember that fee. It's going to be on top of whatever fees that your realtor negotiated, and also whatever closing costs with the title company or attorney or whatever that is. So keep that in mind. You do have some additional taxes over there. Number 2, let's talk about number 2. I was thinking about politics and culture. It's no secret that Idaho is a red state and Washington is a blue state. And, political leanings, North Idaho is generally far more conservative and Republican leaning compared to Washington, which is known for its more liberal and democratic politics. And so, if that's where you lie, that is just something to kind of keep in mind, that as you think about making that move, are you going to feel comfortable depending on where your culture and beliefs are as far as politics and culture. The social atmosphere here with North Idaho, has a more rural, small town feel, while Washington, in a lot of those areas, especially over there on the West Coast, you've got the larger cities like Seattle and, so understand that, you have a lot more diverse population in the Washington areas, even with Spokane and Seattle, a lot of different cultural offerings. And so keep those things in mind. We're a small area, most of it's rural area up here, and it's just, going to be a little different. We move a little slower here. Everything's a little more laid back. So keep that in mind as far as politics and culture. You might want to just kind of see if things align with how you feel. Let's move on. Number 3, outdoor recreation. Well, Idaho is known for having, especially North Idaho, just that is one of the big things or quality of life that attracts a lot of people, is that being able to enjoy the great outdoors here, be a part of that, the hiking, skiing, mountain biking, all those things. Now, I know Washington has a lot of those things also, but from my research, I'm seeing Idaho has more available state land, public lands, that offers more of these things from what I've been able to see. North Idaho here, we are known for, we've got many lakes and mountains, these types of things that just is a huge draw. So depending on where you're at in the Washington area, you may not have access to a lot of the same outdoor recreation. And especially you get into, some of that like Kirkland area and Yakima, where you've got a lot of flat ground out there. It's a lot of farmland and doesn't offer these same types of things. So just kind of keep that in mind. And outdoor recreation is huge here, and we love our outdoor recreation. The next one I was thinking about, number 4, the laws and regulations. And Washington is going to be a far more highly regulated area than we are seeing here in Idaho. And some of that I was thinking about is firearms is a big one. Idaho is far more relaxed when it comes to firearms compared to Washington. Idaho has a constitutional carry where you can open carry, you can conceal carry, these things, and it's lawful to do that. It's not uncommon to see people walking around with guns on their hip, and most likely what you see is probably only 10% of what actually, because most people here will conceal carry. I shouldn't say most, I don't know that. I know that the people I know, that a large percentage of them conceal carry, and rightly so. They want to do that. That makes them feel comfortable. So firearms are widely accepted here. We just assume that everybody has them and has access to them. And so maybe that's what also helps keep our crime levels down and some of that type of stuff. So I do know that Washington is a lot heavier regulated, and I know that they have proposed some new laws to even make it more regulated. So to have some regulations on magazine size and purchasing ammo and some of those things that we don't deal with here. And the type of weapon, the weapons they call assault rifles, which the AR-15s, which, or just a lot of these AR weapons that have been coined AR weapons. They're made by a lot of different brands. And so here in Idaho, a lot of those are used for hunting and just getting out and fun shooting. And we have the large magazines and a lot of that type of stuff. So I love my guns. I love, being able to have them and enjoy my Second Amendment right. And but that's not for everybody. And so if that makes you uncomfortable, then that is something you need to keep in mind, because they are plentiful here. We have hunting seasons and regulations that differ between the two states. And so that's something that you're going to want to take a look at and see how those things differ, see what that looks like for you. Number 5, amenities in lifestyle. We've got not near the amenities that you're going to have in some of these bigger areas in Washington. So urban amenities, Washington, which is larger cities and generally offers a wider range of amenities, such as shopping and dining, entertainment, cultural attractions, those types of things. So, if those are things you're looking for, we just don't have that here. In fact, I think the only real big store as far as clothing we had here in our little mall was Macy's, and it's now going out of business. So if you're not comfortable with shopping for your clothes at Walmart, Ace Hardware, or some of those places, I don't even know if they offer clothes, but we don't have a wide variety here in the North Idaho area. I'm sure it gets even slimmer once you get up into the Sandpoint area, but there are a lot of boutique shopping areas in this. We are a resort town, both areas, and so if you're looking for something special, or there is some of that boutique stuff that is available. And we are only 20 miles out of Spokane Valley, where there is a mall. So we do have access, but we don't have near the access to probably the type of shopping that maybe people are accustomed to in the, say, Seattle area or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind. Healthcare is another one. We don't have the access to all the healthcare that I'm sure you have in the bigger cities. And so do your research, make sure that insurance provider is accepted here, those types of things. But I know that people do go over to that Spokane area, and maybe they go into Seattle or find other places. If there's a medical reason that they have that needed, special surgery or something like that, you're probably just not going to find it here. But we do have a lot of those services. I just had back surgery here last year. It was done right here. Fantastic. The doctors were amazing. The hospital was amazing. And I can't say enough about how well that went, and recovered fantastic. So just know that if there are certain services, specialized services you're looking for, it just may not be available here. Do your research. Lifestyle. We touched on this just a little bit earlier, but number 6 here with lifestyle, pace of life in North Idaho is a little bit slower. And than you're going to find in, maybe even Spokane, but most certainly the Seattle area. People are a little more laid back here in a lot of, cases. We've got smaller communities. People love their communities. We've got a lot of people that have pride in where they live and what they're doing, and those types of things. And so to keep in mind that if you're just want to be left alone, maybe that's hard. You go to the grocery store and people want to chat with you in line, and you go out for a walk and people are constantly waving and saying hi. They let you into traffic here. So those are wonderful things, but you might find that some of it's just a little slower than what you were looking for. And so keep that in mind. Again, do your research, but if you're looking to kind of get into more laid back and comfortable lifestyle, again, quality life is what brings a lot of people this way. Number 7, this is probably one of the biggest ones that I get a lot, other than like politics and even the guns. Weather is a huge one here. North Idaho and Western Washington especially experience very distinct different weather patterns. So due to just their geological locations and influences, like Seattle has the influence of Pacific Ocean and some of those mountain ranges over there. So some key differences with our weather. Obviously Spokane's going to experience a real close to the same weather we have here because we're so close. A lot of the same climate here, but you get over to Western Washington or even Southern Washington, where it's a lot more wide open. But for the sake of this, I know we have a lot of people that come this way from Western Washington, so that's something to keep in mind. Which is known for, its abundant rainfall, particularly during the winter months. The Olympic Mountains there create rain effect, rain shadow effect, whatever you want to call it, resulting in, significantly higher precipitation over there along that coast and in the Puget Sound region. So North Idaho, generally, we're drier than Western Washington, which has with less overall precipitation. We still receive snow in the winter here in North Idaho. The amounts are typically less, though, in precipitation than the coastal areas over there of Western Washington. And so temperature-wise, obviously Spokane's going to be real close to what we're seeing here in the Coeur d'Alene area, but you get over to Western Washington, it has a lot more moderate climate due to the proximity of the ocean, and temperatures are just generally milder over there with less extreme variations, between summer and winter versus Idaho here. We have 4 distinct seasons. We get up to the low hundreds in the summer. It gets hot, and we have beautiful springs and falls, with mild, and then it gets cold. It gets cold and snows, and here in the winter. So we do get all 4 seasons. It's something to keep in mind. We have a lot colder winters here, hotter summers, and results in more distinct temperature swings here in this area. So, June is one of those months that drive me nuts, because you'll plan something because it's 80 degrees or 85, and then so you'll think, oh, it's going to be a great weekend out on the lake, and all of a sudden it's 60 degrees. And so we do get these huge swings. And so Western Washington, just lower elevation. They might receive some snow, but typically doesn't accumulate significantly over there. More rain is common, as we talked about. The mountains, though, however, they do get some substantial snowfall, making them, popular for skiing and some of those things over there. Same with Idaho, we do get some significant snowfalls at times. Great snowpack, and we have 4 ski areas here in North Idaho. They're all close to, I guess they're not all ones in Spokane, but if you're in Coeur d'Alene, you've got 4 ski areas all within about an hour's drive. And so if you love the winter sports, or you want to get out in the mountains and snowmobile or do any of those types of things, we have that, because we do get typically get a snowpack in the mountains that allow for just all that fun winter stuff we love to do. So humidity, Western Washington usually has a higher humidity levels than what we've got here, with their proximity to the ocean. It feels a little more damp, but some of those things where we're drier over here. Bring your lotion, if you're coming over, because, it's a little drier, your skin's going to dry out. We don't have the humidity levels that you have over there. We just have a little more extreme temperatures. Wind. Western Washington can experience some strong winds, I know, especially during your storms. Here in northern Idaho, we can have huge storms with 70-mile-an-hour winds knocking over trees and some of those things. If you live in like South Rathdrum and North Post Falls, some of that out on the prairie, you're going to experience a lot of wind. So wind is pretty common probably in both areas. You're going to see about the same in Spokane as you're seeing in here in the Coeur d'Alene area. So Western Washington, it's characterized by its mild temperature and abundant rainfall and higher humidity, where North Idaho is known for, just being drier, more snow, bigger weather swings. So a lot of these differences in the weather patterns are primarily due to, just the influences of the Pacific Ocean and the presence of all the mountains. So do your research, if you're thinking that this is an area that is interesting to you. I always suggest come in the summer, come in the winter, see if those are things that feel great to you. As people are looking to make the move, obviously, is it worth it? Is the quality of life here what you're experiencing? These are just a lot of general trends and specific experiences that depend on different locations from where you're at in Washington and in Idaho. It's important. Do your research. If you've got questions, reach out. Me and my team are never too busy for you. We'd be happy to answer your question. We're licensed in Washington and Idaho. I've been a realtor here in Idaho for about 20 years. So I'd like to think that probably a lot of those questions I can answer. And if I don't know the answer, I know where to go get the answer. So feel free to give us a call. And if you do decide to make the move over here, we want to help you make your move to North Idaho a smooth transition. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next video.